Hello, welcome to Anita the Pedagogue channel. Today, we continue with our English language lessons and we want to look at key writing forms, conventions of diaries and journals. Let's look at our lesson objectives for today. Define diaries and journals. Identify the features of a diary. We'll look at that using a sample diary. Date of entry in diaries and journals, the content of a diary or a journal, the use of the first person narrative, the tenses, the use of powerful adjectives, a sample examination question. Now let's go on and look at what diaries are. So diaries and journals express personal accounts of the writer. They also recount events in an engaging manner. So diaries and journals are usually about the writer's personal life, or talks about the events and the activities of the person writing them. And diaries and journals are usually kept by individuals to plan and keep track of their activities. Let's look at the features of a diary or journal using our sample diary. Tuesday, 25th April. What a terrific day it has been. I went round all the classes with my campaign team all week, only to place third in this damn head girl race. To say I'm disappointed is an understatement. I am full of rage, cold and sullen. Seeing Margaret and Zoe congratulated for their victory was painful, but worse, I had to celebrate their achievement. Lying on my bed this evening, my pillow is wet with tears. How will I face everyone tomorrow? I will fake illness tomorrow. No, I will step out with boldness. So, let's look at some of the features of a diary that we can find in this sample. So 1, there is a date of entry, Tuesday, 25th April. In every diary, it is expected that you write the date of entry. Also, there is the use of the first person narrative. Remember that a diary is usually about the writer. It recounts the experiences and activities of the writer. So it uses the first person narrative, I. So you realize that throughout this sample diary, there is the use of the first person narrative, I, showing that it is about the writer. Also, there is the use of the past tense, the past perfect tense. So we see that it has been, I went round all the classes. So these are things that have happened in the past or have happened already that are being recounted. The reference to time or sequence. So it talks about when these things happened all week. It moves on to talk about presently what is happening and also in the future. So there's a reference to time throughout this diary or journal. Also, there is an inclusion of personal feelings through the use of some powerful adjectives in describing how the writer feels. So the writer talks about the fact that I am full of rage, cold and sullen. So here we are able to know exactly how this writer feels about the situation at hand. It is advised that you use powerful adjectives because this is a GCSE, and so you are expected to use a standard and an advanced use of the English language. So instead of saying I am sad and unhappy, you would have to use some powerful adjectives that can paint a picture of your real personal feelings, like rage, cold, sullen. These words are words that speak more about the personal feelings of the writer. The use of the future tense in this particular diary entry. So, how will I face everyone tomorrow? I will fake illness. So, this talks about the future plans of this writer. So, basically, these are the main features of a diary or a journal. We'll now take our time and look at each feature to understand it better. Let's begin with the date of entry. So usually you are expected to write the date on which you are writing this particular journal or diary. And there are so many forms by which you can write your date. I would advise that you write your date in full. So Thursday, October 3, Tuesday, August 6, 2019, the 21st of April 2019. I would advise you to write the date in full. But the most important thing here is for you to have a date of entry. Let's move on to the content. So after you've written your date, what do you have to do next? So remember, you are going to recount, describe or explain an event or incident that has probably happened in the past. Or you will be talking about something that you are presently doing or something that is currently happening. Also, you can write about your future projections or plans of what you intend to do. What I would like you to note is that even though for the content of a diary or a journal, you can write any of these 3 points I've given you, every specific examination question has its own demands, which you must strictly abide by. So it is advisable to look at what your exam question is requiring of you so that you can write that. I would say that it is good to include some sensory language, vocabulary that appeals to the 5 senses, okay? That gives us imagery when you are describing an event. In recounting, it would be great if you're able to describe exactly what these events are. Also, I would advise you to use varied sentences and sophisticated vocabulary. Use varied sentences and sophisticated vocabulary because the quality of your writing would earn you some marks. So it is very important to use varied sentences like simple sentences, some complex sentences, and some compound sentences, and also to use some vocabulary or registers that help you to explore or recount your events. Let's look at the use of the first person narrative. So, a diary should always be written in the first person, not the second or third person narrative. Also, when you are writing in the first person, the pronouns that you usually use are I, me, we, us, because you're the writer, you are writing about something that involves you. So it is very important to make sure that you use these pronouns. Let's look at some tenses for diaries and journals. So varied sentences can be used to write entries of diaries and journals. However, the simple present, simple past, and past perfect tenses are usually the ones that you need to be able to make a very good diary or journal entry. So for simple present tense, we have some examples as I'm afraid, I feel awful, I eat breakfast early, I go to the gym with my gang, we play with the girls at the pool. These are things that are happening currently. So the simple present tense. Also, we have the simple past tense. We left the studio heartbroken, I gave up on my talent, we jumped onto the bus, we cooked lunch together, he started the fight. So these are examples of the use of the past tense, things that have already happened in the past. Then we have the past perfect tense, also talking about things that have already happened in the past. So we have Alice had grabbed the chair. We had forgotten all about the treasure. I hadn't eaten pizza in a while. John had gone out already. I had saved my secret document. So for tenses, again, look at the question that you've been given in your examination and use the tenses very appropriate. But in total, to make a very good diary or journal entry, you need to make use of the simple present tense, the simple past tense, and the past perfect tense. Now let's look at the use of some powerful adjectives in diaries or journals. So, use interesting and powerful adjectives when you are describing emotions in a diary entry. I would advise you use more sophisticated vocabulary or words with some implicit meaning. So, for example, when you're using some adjectives, it is advised that you go for the one that gives you a deeper meaning to say. So instead of saying happy, you have some other options like cheerful, contented, delighted, ecstatic, elated, jubilant, thrilled. So why not go for these words instead of just using happy? Same with the adjective sad. You could go in for bitter, dismal, heartbroken, melancholy, mournful, sorrowful, bereaved, dejected, depressed. These would help you to explain your exact feelings. We have the adjective interesting. You could also use some powerful adjectives that also mean interesting, like alluring, amusing, compelling, fascinating, impressive, intriguing, lovely, pleasing, provocative, stimulating, striking, thought-provoking, captivating, or enchanting. I mean, the adjectives go on and on and on. Let's look at surprise. So instead of saying surprise, you could say bewildered, dazed, startled, stunned, alarmed, astounded, confounded, stupefied. So all these are some examples of powerful adjectives that you can use in expressing and describing your emotions and your events. Paper 1, question 3, the external response to reading, which is 25 marks, and also paper 2, question 1, directed writing, which is 40 marks. You are asked to write one of these text types. Letter, obviously, yes, diary or journal, newspaper article, report or magazine article, speech, interview, or report writing. So in any of these 2 papers, you could be asked to write a diary or a journal. Let's take a look at our sample question. This is from paper 1, question 3. And the question is, you as you say, a day later you write an entry in your journal in which you bullet point 1, describe where you have been and what you have seen in the final stages of your adventure. Bullet point 2, explain how you have felt during the recent days about the expedition and your leader Raposo. Bullet point 3, describe what has happened since you saw the broken remains of the settlement. Write the words of your journal. Base your journal entry on what you have read in text C, but be careful to use your own words. Address each of the 3 bullet points. Write about 250 to 350 words. Up to 15 marks are available for the content of your answer, and up to 10 marks for the quality of your writing. So anytime you have a question like this, 1, use the past perfect tense to describe vividly what already happened, because the question in bullet point 1 specifically asks you to describe where you have been and what you have seen in the final stages of your adventure. So be sure to use the past perfect tense because you are going to be talking about something that has already happened. And remember, you are describing, so make sure you use some sensory language in order to give us an imagery of what you are describing. So, the use of personal feelings. So, use powerful adjectives in sensory language. So, bullet point 2 says you should explain how you felt. So, you're going to talk about feelings. And in describing your feelings, it's very important to use some powerful adjectives. Also, describe using sensory language and similes. So you have to describe what has happened since you saw the broken remains of the human settlement. You want to make sure you are able to use vocabulary that helps us to have an imagery of what you are describing, and also use some similes to help us get a better picture or imagery of your description. In addition, base your journal on ideas from text C, because remember this is question 3, which is extended response to reading. So make sure you base your ideas from text C, but do not use the words from the text. Use your own words as much as possible. Use the 3 bullet points mainly. Try and address the first bullet point, the second bullet point, and then the third bullet point. These can be developed in paragraphs. So that is a sample examination question. Now let's move on and do a quick recap. So anytime you write a diary or journal entry, ensure it ticks these boxes. 1. Make sure you've written the date of entry. Make sure you've used the correct tenses. Make sure you have included some personal feelings by using some powerful adjectives. Also, make sure that there are words related to time and sequence. Make sure you use sensory language as well. I hope this lesson was useful. Put in your comments and questions and I'll respond to you. Do like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Until I come your way again, keep learning and be the best version of yourself.